Hello everyone, I'm Trisha, it's me Jenny, and it's time for another Not Naked video response to Trisha Hershberger's Naked Truth series, where we talk as candidly and as honestly as possible about a subject of her choosing. Most people do it naked, I choose not to, but I do it straight out of the shower, usually with wet hair. Today is a non-hair washing day, and this is not my first take. Today's subject is age differences in relationships, and whether or not significant age differences should affect that relationship. For me personally, I'm 22. I don't think I would feel comfortable at my age dating someone who was under 20 or over 27, 28. You know, specifically at the point that I'm at in time. If I do go below 20, I'm then dating a teenager, which I would feel slightly uncomfortable with. And I don't think I'd feel comfortable dating someone who was more than 10 years older than me, just because, as Trisha said, their priorities are probably very different and they've got very different life expectations. And I don't feel like that would be an equal relationship that I could be a part of, or that I would be able to balance that inequality with my current level of life experience. That being said, obviously if I cross that bridge and I meet someone who is outside of that boundary and there is a real connection and I feel like there is potential for a loving, committed relationship, then I will cross that bridge when I get to it. That's kind of my rule of thumb, is that for me, I think there is a power difference with when it comes to age differences, and I'm an advocate of as much as possible equal relationships where the relationships aren't stigmatised by one person's power in terms of wealth or age or employability or anything like that. But I do feel like if there is genuine love and commitment, no matter what the age, as long as the age of consent and things like wills, for lack of a better word, are taken into account. Things like ways of dealing with if one of them passes long before the other are considered within that relationship, then all power to them. And you know, if I were to meet someone who was significantly older than me and that relationship progressed to the point, obviously as long as we discussed the relationship and considered that aspect of the relationship, then I think I would be contented with that. I do truly believe that people who have very significant age differences can be genuinely in love, and my point in evidence to that is my grandfather was born in 1892, and he had a wife and he had children, and then she passed away, and many years later he fell in love again and had a second wife, who was my grandmother, and had 3 children who are my mother and her siblings. And at the point where they were married, she was 26 and he was 62. And I never met my grandfather. He lived to 97 years old and he died 3 years before I was born. So I never met him, and in fact all of what I know from him has come from my grandmother and from my mother and from her brother and sister. And everything that I can tell from that relationship was that despite the age difference, there was a happy, committed, healthy relationship, and they managed to have 3 happy, healthy children that have grown up into contented adults who all have children of their own. And you know, what more can you do with that? That is love, that is commitment. And you know, there is a certain difference in terms of, you know, he was Victorian, my grandfather was Victorian, so there is that level of difference that wouldn't maybe be so prevalent now, where obviously women of that era, the time for having children was much more limited. If you were unmarried by 26, 27, you would be considered an old maid. If you're unmarried by 35, you are basically given up on completely. Rather now, things like fertility treatments have allowed there to be a lot more aspects, a lot more flexibility for women to be more career focused, to have children when they're in their 40s or 50s and still have happy, contented children. and it equals the playing field something incredibly powerfully, so that yes, my granddad was Victorian, and for him it was a bit more normal for him to be able to be so much older than my grandmother, and there is a level of, well, that was way back when. Now I feel like as women women are now able to choose to have relationships older, which means that there is less stigma about women marrying younger men, and there is a bit less stigma in terms of older women having slightly younger partners, which has always been something that's been so incredibly prevalent in that sort of commitment, where there is that gender trope that women like older men and men like younger girls, and that is mostly due to the fact that it comes down to biology. And now that we have so much more flexibility in terms of biology, I think that gender double standard is becoming more flexible. So I do believe that people can love each other of any age, and I really appreciate that there is less double standard when it comes to gender inequality. For me personally, I'd feel more comfortable dating an older man than a younger man, but again, as I said, no matter what the age, I will cross that bridge if I feel like there is a relationship that is possible to be happy, healthy and committed like my grandparents. And yeah, obviously, just as a side thing, and one of the reasons why I have done more than one take is when my grandfather was 62, he'd already had a previous family, and that complicates things, particularly when the children from the previous family are older than the same age as the second wife. So without going into any details at all, that sort of thing where age and experience in terms of pre-existing emotional relationships and legality has to be considered if that is a factor. But there we go. I've talked for way too long. It's going to take forever to upload. I'm so sorry. Feel free to comment down below. Thank you for the subject, Trisha. And there we go. Words and stuff and things. Bye guys.